they're going to affect local government at least as much as any other part of the public sector. There are virtually no protected services within local government, and therefore it is going to find itself bearing the highest levels of cuts. Now, will it be 40%? Probably not, but certainly 25 to 30% potentially over 4 or 5 years. It's an unprecedented scale of reductions over a very long time. So there's something very different about this particular need to reduce public spending in local authorities as compared with earlier times this has happened.
Imagine a situation like this. You go to Tesco's this week, you buy a can of beans, it's 50 pence. You give them 50 pence, they give you a can of beans. Next week, the can of beans is 70 pence. You give them 70 pence and they say, I'm awfully sorry, I can't give you the can of beans either. That's actually where local government can find itself. That there's a compact, isn't there, at the moment, between taxation and spend, where people expect to spend something but they expect something in return. If councils aren't able to deliver and taxation is going up, then the compact between the citizen and the paid-for state could easily be broken.
I think the challenges for local government are huge. We know that there are big cuts coming. I think it's inevitable that there will be impacts upon services. I don't think we'll be able to get away from that.
I think where we will see some big changes now are in those support services, sometimes described as back office services. So we'll start to see changes there, and we're likely to see sort of new models, I think, of delivery being developed for those, so joint ventures potentially with the private sector, maybe working in partnership with other organisations. So I think we will see some changes without doubt, because cuts of that scale will inevitably mean that things will need to change.
I think we're doing our very best to avoid the effects on frontline services by focusing on savings in back offices and merged services, shared services. However, given the scale of the cuts that we're facing, it's inevitable that there will be some reduction in frontline services. Savings at this level cannot be achieved without savings in frontline services, unfortunately.
Probably going to have to think about how we deliver those services in conjunction with the public too, and also create new models of delivery, so social enterprises. So we're going to have to be much more imaginative and also much more industrial about the way we deliver.
The sort of levels that are being bandied about here at the conference, some of the figures that are being kicked around, are fairly eye-watering. And yeah, that does mean that we'll be cutting back on what we do. But before we actually get into cutting into things that people value, we need to talk more about our own organisations, how efficient they are, who we work with and how we get there.
The challenge for us is a number of things. First of all, we want a grown-up discussion with our customers about what's important to them. I think you need to think about and throw away the thinking of the past, which is around government targets and government priorities. It's what's important now to local people, and that's where we need to think carefully about those are the services we need to develop, but ultimately get better services from less.
I think it is going to be challenging, and I think we have to be honest with the people we serve and make the case as to why services will have to be reduced and in some cases withdrawn. And that will mean first fighting to find every efficiency, make savings in contracts. So the first bit is to look at the efficiencies in contracts. Then we have to be honest and say, right, what can we strip out in terms of layers of management and the corporate centre? And only then would we have to look at core services.
We think it gives added incentive to engage all our staff and our community in what the most important service issues are, and focusing and prioritising on them rather than wasting time, energy and resources in things that we actually don't need to be doing.
In fact, there's some things that aren't going to change at all in terms of the way that we deliver services. We'll be working harder on priorities and reducing work on services that are not priorities, including statutory services that aren't. Looking at a 10-year budget plan in terms of sorting out our budget gap and the way that we work with the partners that we've got in the public, private and voluntary sectors, and thinking about our community engagement to make sure that the things that we do change are changed in line with the public's priorities and expectations.